Hello and welcome to Elemental Hardware Enrichment. My name is Aiden, and today we're going to be building a catapult. Before we get started with building, let's go ahead and talk about the supplies that we're going to need for this project. So to build the catapult, we're going to need a rag, a pair of safety glasses, let's go ahead and put those on now, a bottle of glue, a tray for all of our hardware, some sandpaper, and a sanding block. Now that we've got all our supplies introduced, let's go ahead and talk about the tools that we're going to need for this project. So I have my toolkit right here. I'm going to go ahead and open it up and take out what I need. The first thing I'm going to be taking out is my hammer. I'm also going to need a Phillips head screwdriver. That's the one with the little cross tip on the front. And the last thing I'm going to need is my measuring tape. Once I have everything taken out of my toolbox, I can go ahead and close it up and get it out of the way. Alright, we've got our tools, we've got our supplies. Now it's time to open up our kit and talk about the materials we're going to find inside. Alright, we're ready to open up our kit and talk about the different materials we're going to find inside. To open up the box, I'm going to be using the back of my hammer, and I'm just going to slide the hammer down the crease in the tape where the two box flaps meet to split it open. Once I've split the tape, I can go ahead and grab the corners and pry the box open. Now that I've got my box open, let's go ahead and talk about what's inside. The first thing I'm going to take out is some packing paper. You want to make sure to open up the packing paper just to make sure no little pieces got caught up inside of it. Now we can get it out of our way. The next thing we're going to take out is our bag of hardware. We'll go ahead and put this off to the side and talk about it a little later. Next, we're going to start with our wood pieces. The first two pieces I'm taking out are going to be the uprights for my catapult. Next, I have my launching cup. Next, I have two rounded over rectangle pieces that are going to serve as the base for our catapult. And the last wood piece we're taking out is going to be our launching arm. Now that we've got all of our wood pieces introduced, let's go ahead and talk about our hardware. So I'm going to go ahead and get the box out of my way. And let's talk about the different pieces of hardware you're going to get inside your catapult kit. The first thing I'm taking out is this orange dot bag with the balls for our catapult. We're going to put those off to the side and use them a little bit later. Next, I'm going to be taking out this yellow dot bag. Inside this bag, we have our 1/4 inch fluted dowels. The next bag I'm taking out is going to be the blue dot bag, and inside the blue dot bag, we have the rubber bands for our catapult. Next, we have our red dot bag. Inside the red dot bag, we have an eye hook, a nut, and a screw. The last thing I'm going to be taking out is this green dot bag with my dowels inside. So let's go ahead and open that up and talk about the different dowels that we have for this project. I like to start by arranging my dowels from longest to shortest. So you can see we have two longer dowels. Let's put those in our tray for now. Next, we have three short dowels. There are two shorter dowels that are the same length and width, but the difference between them is that one has a pre-drilled hole through the middle and the other doesn't. The last of our shorter dowels is going to be slightly narrower in circumference than the other two. Now that we've introduced all of our materials and hardware, let's get started sanding our wood pieces. Okay, we're ready to start sanding. So to sand our wood pieces, we're going to need our sandpaper and our sanding block. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set the sandpaper onto the sanding block. To do that, you're going to hold your sandpaper so that the soft side faces up, and you're going to lay the sanding block across it so that it fills the whole paper. You're then going to fold one side over the middle, and then the other side over that to make a little sandpaper burrito. Next, we're going to take our wood pieces and we're just going to sand them down so they're nice and smooth and safe to work with. One thing you may want to do is what's called breaking the edge. That's when you run the sandpaper against the edge of your wood pieces a few times. What this does is it softens the edge, rounds it over, and makes it less likely to splinter. So let's go ahead and break the edges and sand all of our wood pieces now. All right, we've got all our pieces sanded, so now let's take our rag and wipe off the dust from our pieces that we just made from sanding. And don't forget to wipe off your work surface when you finish. Alright, we finished sanding our wood pieces, so the next step is going to be to prep our dowels by beveling the edge with our sandpaper. Okay, so now we're ready to start beveling our dowels. What we're going to do is we're going to pick up our dowels and we're going to hold our sandpaper straight up and down. I'm then going to be beveling the very top and bottom edge of each of my dowels. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the dowel against the sandpaper at a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to run it up and down the sandpaper as I rotate it in my hand to bevel that top edge evenly. I'm going to do about 10 seconds on each side. The reason that we're doing this is because we're going to be setting these dowels into our wood parts, and it makes it a lot easier to do once you've beveled the edge. So once you finish with one dowel, go ahead and move on and do the rest of your dowels. Alright, now we've got a nice beveled edge on all of our dowels and we're ready to get started building our catapult. The first step of building our catapult is going to be to set up our first upright. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one of my uprights. It doesn't matter which one you start with. And you'll notice that one side of the upright is basically flat with just two small holes here at the bottom. And the other side has these inset holes running from top to bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the upright down onto my work surface so that the top of the upright, this narrow section, is facing away from me and the wider bottom is facing towards me. I'm then going to begin setting my dowels. For this step, I'm only going to need my shorter dowels, so I'm going to move my longer dowels off to the side and put them into my tray. The first dowel we're going to be working with is one of these two dowels that look similar. What you want to look for is the dowel with the hole in it. That's going to be our second dowel. We're going to be starting with the dowel that has no hole in it. What we're going to do is we're going to open up our glue. Be sure to keep track of your red cap. I'm going to put mine into my tray. And I'm going to go ahead and place a little bit of glue along one of the beveled edges that I just sanded. Once I've got my glue on there, I can go ahead and spread it out evenly with my finger. Then I can wipe my finger on my rag and begin to set my dowel. So what you really want to focus on is setting your dowel straight up and down and completely into the hole. So I'm going to rest my dowel over this top hole. I'm then going to pick up my hammer. I'm going to make sure to hold the dowel straight up and down and brace it in place with my offhand, and I'm going to hammer it down into place. What I'm going to be doing is listening for the sound to change so I know that it's fully set into the hole. So let's go ahead and listen for that now. Once I get that deeper hammer sound, I know that the dowel is fully set. I can also give it a little jiggle to make sure it's not going to move at all, and then I can go ahead and wipe up any excess glue using my rag. Now that I've got my first dowel set, I'm going to go ahead and set the second one. The next dowel we're going to be working with is this dowel here with the hole through the center. And that's going to go into the hole directly above that first hole we were working with. Just like before, we're going to go ahead and set some glue around one of the beveled edges. And then we're going to spread that glue out evenly using our finger. Once you've got your glue spread out, you can go ahead and set your dowel. Now it's really important that the hole in the center of this dowel is facing straight up and down towards the first dowel that we placed. So I'm going to set it over the hole in my upright, and I'm just going to make sure that I have that center hole facing up towards my first dowel. From there, I'm going to hold everything in place with my offhand, making sure I'm holding it straight up and down, and I'm going to use my hammer to tap it completely into that hole. Again, I'm listening for the sound of my hammer strikes to change so that I know it's completely set. Once I've got it set, I'll give it a little jiggle to test it, and then go ahead and wipe up any excess glue. All right, we got that set in there, so now we're ready to set our last dowel. Before we set this one in there, we're going to do a couple of measurements using our measuring tape. So what I want to do is open up my measuring tape, and I'm going to pull out about 5 inches. Now if I set the flat edge of this dowel up against the edge of the measuring tape, I can see that it's close to 2.5 inches. It's not quite right, but we're just going to estimate that it's about 2.5 inches to make this easy on ourselves. What we want to do is we want to locate the approximate center of that dowel. So what I'm looking for is about 1.25 inches. If I'm looking at my measuring tape, that's going to be about right there. Once I have that spot set in my mind, I'm going to mark it with my thumb, and then I'm going to pick up my sandpaper and I'm going to use it to sand out the center of the dowel. What I'm doing is I'm just laying the dowel over the sandpaper like this, and I'm going to rotate it in my fingers as I run the sandpaper back and forth to sand that center section. Once I've sanded that section, I'm going to go ahead and wipe the dowel off using my rag, and then I can go ahead and set it into the remaining hole just like I did with my other ones. Close up my measuring tape, we're done with that, move it off to the side, and let's go ahead and place some glue along one of the beveled edges on our dowel. Once you've got your glue on there, go ahead and place that glued side down over the remaining hole. Remember to hold it straight up and down using your offhand, and we'll go ahead and tap it into place. Once you've got it set, give it a little jiggle to make sure it's secure, and go ahead and wipe everything up using your rag. Now that we've got the dowel set into our first upright, we can begin setting up our launching arm so we can attach it to the last dowel we just attached to our upright. All right, we're ready to begin setting up our launching arm so that we can attach it to our upright. So I'm going to move my hammer out of the way, and I'm also going to move my upright out of the way for this step. What I'm going to need is my launching cup, my launching arm, and I'm going to be looking for my red dot bag. Inside this red dot bag, there's a small wood screw that we're going to use to attach the cup to the launching arm. So I'm going to open up the bag and remove the screw. I'm then going to set the screw into the launching cup so I can set it up to attach to the arm. Now if you take a look at the launching cup, it has one side that's flat with a small pre-drilled hole in the center, and another side that also has that pre-drilled hole and has an inset running around it. This side with the inset is going to be the top of our cup. So we're going to go ahead and set this screw into the center hole from the top. We're just going to use our fingers to set it into the hole and screw it lightly into place. Once we have it in place, we're going to set it down, and we're going to pick up our launching arm. Now you'll notice that one side of the launching arm has this large through hole in the side, and the other side has no through hole, but in one edge there's a small pre-drilled hole where our cup is going to go. What I'm going to do is just place a small amount of glue on either side of that little hole. I'm going to try not to cover the hole, but it's okay if you do. Once I've set my glue on there, I'm going to place the launch arm flat on my desk so that that hole is facing up. And then I'm going to pick up the cup and I'm going to use the small point of the screw that's sticking out the bottom to line it up with that pre-drilled hole. Once I've got everything lined up, I'm going to hold it all in place with my offhand, and I'm going to use my dominant hand to screw that screw down to completely secure the cup to the launching arm. Once I've got it set in there, I want to try to move it back and forth. Your launching cup should not move at all when it's attached to the arm. You want to make sure that it's fully pressed down against the arm and it's not going to move. Then you can go ahead and wipe up any excess glue. Now that we've got our launching arm set up, we're ready to attach it to our upright so we can move on with the next step of our catapult. For this next step, we're going to be attaching our launching arm to the upright that we've already set up with our dowels. We're going to be setting it onto this narrower dowel here at the bottom, and it's important that we set the launching arm in the correct orientation. What we want to do is look for this through hole at the bottom of the arm and rest it over the top of that dowel. Now, like I said, the orientation here is very important. We want to make sure that our launching arm is sticking straight up and down and that it's behind these two dowels. We also want to make sure that when it's straight like this, the launching cup rests just above these dowels. It's very important that you set your launching arm correctly for your catapult to function properly. Once you've got it set into place, I'm going to rotate it around so it's towards my dominant hand. I'm going to use my offhand to kind of center it over the dowel, and I'm going to lightly tap it down into place with my hammer so that it rests just about the center of this dowel. Once you've got it at just about the center, you can kind of start to rock it back and forth to make sure that your arm is going to move back and forth easily. If you notice that your arm isn't moving easily, just move it back and forth until it starts to loosen up. The looser the arm, the better your catapult is going to launch when it's fully set up. All right, that's feeling pretty good, so we're ready to move on and attach our next upright to complete this step of our catapult. For this next step, we're going to be attaching our remaining upright to the dowels that we attached to our first upright. So I'm going to go ahead and locate my upright right here, and what I'm going to be doing is placing a small amount of glue into the 3 holes that run from top to bottom. So I've got this hole here, this one here, and this one closer to the bottom. You don't need a whole lot of glue, just a couple of drops in each hole will do. Once you've got the glue set into your holes, you're going to rest this over the top of the dowels and begin to line up each dowel with the holes in the upright. It's very important that you have these dowels lined up properly before you begin hammering so you don't risk damaging any of your parts. Once I have everything lined up, I'm going to hold it all in place with my offhand, and I'm going to work from top to bottom with my hammer to tap all of these to top the upright down onto all of these dowels evenly. So I'm going to start here at the top with a couple of taps, then move to the center, and then down to the bottom. Double check that everything's still lined up properly. Looks pretty good, so let's keep going. Now we're just going to give it a few more taps to make sure everything is set securely. Once you've tapped everything into place, you're going to want to stand this up and make sure that your 2 uprights are straight. Everything's looking good, my launching arm moves, so we're ready to move on to the next step and attach our base pieces. For this next step, we're going to begin setting up our base pieces so we can attach them to our uprights. So I'm going to start with one of my base pieces, it doesn't matter which one, and I'm going to be moving my uprights off to the side for now. You'll notice that one side of the base is completely flat, and the other side has 4 holes running across the edge. What we're going to start by doing is attaching our long dowels into each of the holes on the edge of our base piece. So I'm going to start with one, and I'm going to run some glue along the beveled edge on one side of the dowel. Once I've got the glue on there, I can go ahead and spread it out evenly using my finger. From there, I'm going to set it over one of these holes. Make sure glued side down, and I'm going to hold it straight up and down using my offhand as I tap it into place. Just like the dowels on our upright, we want to make sure it's completely set into this hole and set straight up and down. Once you've got it set, go ahead and wipe up any glue with your damp rag. Now we've got our first one set, let's go ahead and do our next one. Same exact thing, we're going to place a little bit of glue. Spread that glue out evenly. And then place it over the hole and tap it into place. Now we can go ahead and wipe up the excess glue. So you'll notice that we have 2 more holes remaining on our base piece. And these are going to be for the small fluted dowels we have inside our yellow dot bag. So let's go ahead and open up our yellow dot bag and take out our dowels. They're pretty small, so I'm just going to go ahead and dump them into my tray so I don't lose them. We're going to start with 2. So I'm going to grab 2 of them. And each of these dowels is going to go into one of these holes. So I'm going to pick up my first dowel, choose one side, doesn't matter which one, and go ahead and spread some glue over that top edge. Once you've done that, you're just going to hold the dowel in place over one of the holes. Make sure it's straight up and down, and we're going to go ahead and tap it into place with our hammer. Now these dowels are pretty small, so you don't want to hit them too hard. We're just tapping them down into place. Once you've got it in place, go ahead and wipe up any excess glue. All right, we're ready to set our second one. So let's go ahead and get some glue, set it around that top edge, and then we're going to go ahead and place it over the remaining hole. Once we've got it set in place, let's tap it down. Last step is just going to be to wipe up any excess glue. All right, we've got our base piece all set up, so the next step is going to be to attach this base piece to one of our uprights. For the next step, we're going to be attaching the base piece that we assembled in the previous step to the uprights that we made earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my catapult down on its side so that these pre-drilled holes in one of my uprights is facing up. It doesn't matter which upright you choose to work with, either one is fine. What is important is that when we set this base piece, we set it in the correct orientation. So you'll notice that the small fluted dowels are set off to one side, leaving a pretty sizable gap on the other end. That gap needs to rest towards the back of our catapult. So when we set everything up, it should go together like this so that when we open our launching cup, it has that dowel to rest on. We want to make sure that we're setting it up in the correct orientation so that our catapult is properly balanced. Once we've determined the correct orientation for our base piece, we can begin setting up our glue so we can set this into place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place a little bit of glue onto each of my small fluted dowels. And then I'm also going to be placing a line of glue between these small holes on my upright. Once I've got that glue in place, I'm going to spread it out evenly to cover this surface with my finger. Now that I've got my glue all set, I'm going to go ahead and take my base piece, double check that it's oriented the correct way, and I'm just going to use my fingers to line these dowels up with the hole and lightly set them into place. We're not pushing them all the way through, we're just setting them there so it's not going to fall off. Once we've got that done, we're going to go ahead and flip the whole thing over. We're then going to remove the sandpaper from our sanding block. We're going to be using this block to help us attach our two pieces. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set my block here right on top of the inside of my upright. I'm going to use my offhand to make sure this is laying flat on the desk and hold my block in place. I'm then going to use my hammer to tap this upright down. There's 3 different ways to do this. You can do it directly from the middle, or how I prefer to do it is do a couple hits right here next to this hole and then move over and do the same thing on the other side. So let's start with this hole, and we want to remember that we're going to be tapping this into place evenly. So we don't want to do one side all the way and then the next side. We're going to do a little bit here and then move on and do a little bit there until it's completely set. What you want to do is check to make sure that there's no gap between your upright and the base piece. I can see I still have a little bit of a gap here, so I still have some more work to do. Let's go ahead and check it. And it looks like we still have a little bit of a gap, so let's go ahead and finish that off. All right, we've closed up that gap nicely, and we're ready to move on to our next step. For this next step, we're going to set up our remaining base piece and attach it to the remaining upright. So to start, I'm going to move this off to the side for now, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up my remaining base piece. Just like before, I want to find the side with these 4 holes. And what I'm going to do is set my 2 remaining fluted dowels into the small holes in my base. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my dowels. I'm going to start with one, and I'm going to place a little bit of glue along one of the edges. Once I've got that done, I can go ahead and place it over the hole, hold it straight up and down, and tap it into place. Don't forget to wipe up your excess glue. And now we can move on to our next dowel. Once you've got it set, go ahead and wipe up any excess glue. Now that we've got our base piece ready to go, the last step will be to attach it to our uprights to finish the construction of our catapult. Okay, we're ready to attach our remaining base piece to our remaining upright to finish the construction of our catapult. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to move both of these pieces over towards me. I'm going to place a little bit of glue onto the top edges of my fluted dowels. I'm also going to be placing glue along the top edges of these long dowels and down the center here between the two holes on my upright. So I'm going to start with my little dowels. Some glue along the edges of these longer dowels. And then a line of glue between the two holes on my upright. Once I've got my glue in place, I'm going to go ahead and spread it all out evenly with my finger. Don't forget to clean up your finger and clean up any glue that may have dripped onto the table. Once that's done, we can go ahead and place our base piece onto our upright and begin to line everything up. Just like with our previous upright, we want to make sure that this one is in the exact same orientation. So I'm going to double check my orientation is correct, and then go ahead and set my dowels into place over the holes and just set them lightly with my fingers so it's not going to fall off. Once I've done that, just like before, I'm going to go ahead and flip this over, and I'm going to be using my sanding block to tap it down into place. So just like before, I'm going to start over on this hole. I want to make sure that I'm holding this flat against the desk, lining everything up, and I'm tapping everything down evenly. So let's start here, then move on to our second hole on the other side. And we want to just keep tapping these down into place so that it lays flush against our base. Once you have it pretty close to flush, you're going to need to line up your long dowels so that they fit into the holes on your base. So I'm going to move this over to make sure it's sitting right above the hole. And then I'm going to hold everything in place with my offhand and tap it down with my hammer. Now I'm going to continue to set my upright, and then I'll set my second dowel. Now that I've got that one close enough, let's go ahead and line up our dowel over the hole. We're going to hold it all in place with our offhand and go ahead and set that dowel. Now the last thing to do is make sure that our upright is flush against the base piece. So let me go ahead and finish that off now. All right, I've got it all set flush, so let me just go ahead and wipe up any excess glue, and we can move on to our last step. Catapult's looking good, so the last step will be to attach our eye hook and our rubber band so that we can try out our catapult. Now we're ready to attach our eye hook and our rubber band so we can try out our catapult. So I'm going to open up my red dot bag and I'm going to remove the eye hook. The eye hook has a small nut on the bottom here that we're going to unscrew using our fingers. And we're going to set that into our tray so we don't lose it. Next, we're going to need to open up our blue dot bag and take out one of our rubber bands. There should be 2 rubber bands in the bag, but one of them is just an extra in case you need it. So we're going to start with just one rubber band, and we're going to place this rubber band through the ring on our eye hook. We want to pull it through so we have about half of our rubber band on each side. We're then going to choose a side and open that side up using our fingers, and then we're going to place the other side through that loop to make a knot. Just like that, and then pull that side you push through to get your knot nice and tight. Once you have a tight knot like this, you're going to go ahead and place the eye hook down through the hole in the center dowel. Make sure that the ring on the eye hook with the rubber band is facing up. Once you've got that in there, go ahead and pick up your nut, and we're going to replace it onto the eye hook. once you've screwed the nut as tight as you can with your fingers, what I like to do is pinch the nut in place and spin the top of the eye hook to just get it a little bit tighter. Once you've got it as tight as you can, you're going to lift your launching arm, pull the rubber band up and over the cup, and loop it right underneath the bottom of your launch cup. Now when you hold your catapult in place, you can pull the launch arm back and release it to fire your catapult. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and remove the rubber band, get everything painted, and then we can come back and test out our catapult. Alright, I got my catapult all decorated. I decided to just go with a simple color pattern here, a little bit of yellow, red, blue, and green. Nothing fancy. Now we can try out our catapult by using these Velcro balls that came in our kit. What I'm going to do is open up my bag, and I'm going to remove one of the balls. I'm then going to pull the launch arm back all the way down, hold it in place, and then I'm going to set the ball into the cup. When I'm ready, I'm going to release the arm to launch the ball. In 3, 2, 1, fire! That was pretty cool. Let's do it one more time. Pull the arm back, place the ball into the cup, aim, and fire! Awesome. Well anyway, that's our catapult. My name's Aiden with Elemental Hardware Enrichment. I had a really good time building this with you guys today. I hope that you have fun with it too, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one.